Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. The brothers, sisters, inshallah, I did this video previously in Urdu language. Now, inshallah, we'll do it in English language. And we're going to speak about the book which the Brailvi School of Thought recently translated into English and Urdu, Ghibtah An-Nazir, fi tarjuma Sheikh Abdul Qadir, which they attribute to Hafiz ibn Hajar Asqalani. And it has been translated from the Arabic to English by Mokran Gezu, and it was edited by Dr. Hafiz Athar Hussain Al-Azhari, who is a Brailvi scholar. So was this book of Hafiz ibn Hajar Asqalani, the famous, one of the greatest muhaddis of the Shafi muhaddis, is it really the book of is this book really the book of Hafiz ibn Hajar? We're going to discuss this in first place regarding its manuscript. And if this book is really the book of Hafiz ibn Hajar, it will go against the Brailvi school of thought and the creed of Hajar, Nazir, Ilm Ghaib, Mushkil Kusha, and seeking help from the dead. So first we're going to discuss about the manuscript of this book and the presentation of this book, because this book has many chapters summarized from the book Bahjatul Asrar of Imam Shatnufi, a Shafi scholar, which the Brailvi use. It's one of the most used book by the Brailvis to justify their creed of seeking help from the death. You know, Salat Ghosya, walking 11 steps towards Baghdad by doing 2 rakat, and all others. They all take it from this type of books, the book Bahjatul Asrar of Shatnufi, and they take as well other books like Al-Libris and many of Abdulaziz Dabagh and many other misguided Sufi books. So first of all, this book, it was first published by an Orientalist in 1903, Edward Denison Ross. He found his manuscript in Calcutta and he published it. You know, and the original manuscript is present on the website alaluka.net, which is a scan of the original copy printed from the manuscript of Calcutta in 1903. In recent time, in 2007, I think, Dar Kutub Ilmiya, they published it again based on the Indian manuscript within a book called Majmu'a Safina Qadiriya, with many other writings attributed to the Sheikh. So they published this small biography in English. It is 76 pages with 71 pages. The rest at the end is just few notes. So it's a small biography of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, which is supposedly done by Hafiz ibn Hajar, of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, done by. So this book, the thing is, the one who translated it from Arabic to English, he said that there were some problems regarding its attribute. He said in his introduction, Mr. Ross stated that he could not confirm whether or not the book was Ibn Hajar. However, the attribution of the book to Ibn Hajar is confirmed in the addendum to Haji Khalifa's Kashf Zunun. Okay? So he says, nonetheless, the weak Arabic text that one finds in this book begs for an explanation, as Ibn Hajar was a master of the Arabic language. Okay, one can therefore hardly believe that the sloppiness, grammatical errors, and awkward expression encoded in the text are Ibn Hajar's. It is likely that the copies without sufficient knowledge of Arabic made these mistakes. So they said the Calcutta manuscript had some problems of Arabic grammar, and Ibn Hajar, he can't make such mistakes of Arabic. But he said maybe the copyist, one of the copyists, he copied quickly and he made all these errors. So okay, but what is they said that that there's other manuscripts present in Morocco and Tunisia, 3-4 others. So he said, it would be good to compare the Indian manuscript with the other manuscript of this book attributed to Hafiz ibn Hajar Asqalani. As for the Brailvi, the one who introduced it, Mufti Munawwar Atiq Pirzada, he wrote in October 2014. For them, they're pretty confident that this is the book of Hafiz ibn Hajar Asqalani. And if it's the book of Hafiz ibn Hajar Asqalani, in both cases, it will go against the Brailvi school of thought and all their belief. And we're going to see it soon, why this book published by the Brailvis goes actually against their creed. You understand? So in the introduction, the Brailvi scholar Mufti Muhammad Munawwar Pirzada from Jamia Naimia Karachi, he says that Hafiz Sakhawi, you know, the former student of Hafiz ibn Hajar, and Abdullah al-Basri, one of the other students, they both ascribed this work to Ibn Hajar. So, and Jawair al-Durar and Juman al-Durar, okay? And Hafiz Suyuti as well, he ascribed Ghibtah An-Nazir to Ibn Hajar in his book Al-Akhbar al-Hisan fi Fadl al-Taylasan, which is present in the University of Leiden, Holland, and Maktaba Harif Ikmat in Medina. You know this book of Suyuti. So basically, Suyuti, Sakhawi, who were the former students of Hafiz ibn Hajar, they attribute this book to Hafiz ibn Hajar, and they say in their writings, the former students of Ibn Hajar, that our teacher did a summary of the book Bahjatul Asrar of Shatnufi, and this book Bahjatul Asrar is a book of full misguidance. So it is very surprising for someone like Hafiz ibn Hajar to have such mistakes, but this is what, because we mainly think, you know, the Hanaf, they have tasawwuf, but the Shafi late scholars, they had as well big problems in Aqidah. And the Sufis in recent times, they published many books of Hafiz Suyuti. Like we published the books of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah many years ago, Fatwa Ghaus Qutb Abdal of Ibn Taymiyyah with the tahqiq of Shaykh Uzair Shams, showing that all these narrations regarding the Ghaus Qutb Abdal, they're all weak, and many great Hanafi and Shafi scholars, they all agree, scholars of Hadith, as all the narrations regarding the Ghaus Qutb Abdal, they are weak. So we published long ago, but recent time the Sufis, they published a book of Suyuti al-Khabar ad-Dala ala Wujud al-Abdal, which they published last year. So we will review this book of Hafiz Suyuti. They published another book of Hafiz Suyuti about the Tanvir al-Halik, showing the Prophet is alive in his grave and he can come out any time and this and that, whatever the Hayati belief. And they published many other books, the Sufis, regarding these issues. And we try, whenever they publish books, the Sufi to reply to them, like Muhammad ibn Alawi al-Maliki, who as well quote a lot from the dangerous book al-Libris in his books. When he published the books, notions that must be corrected, we published Sheikh Saleh al-Sheikh refutation, Hazi Mafahimuna, you know, regarding all this narration of Utbi and Malik Adar and all others. And we will discuss further the narrations of Utbi and how Ibn Taymiyyah explained it in his book Al-Qaeda fil Muhabba, which is also translated into English. And we already replied to all these narrations in all our books, Jawab al-Bahir, in the of Ibn Taymiyyah. In the appendixes, I went through all the chains of narrations of Al-Utbi, and I showed that they're weak, and the hadith of Malik Adar and all these issues of Tawassul. So we already replied to all these issues. But the main issue is because they're publishing the works of the Sufi Nawawi, Suyuti, and all these scholars, Munawi, Qasalani, and even Maliki like Qurtubi, they all use these narrations to justify seeking intercession at the Prophet's grave, unfortunately. So we have to know that many late scholars, they had these Shafi scholars, they had these problems, like Hafiz ibn Mulaqin, Ibn Daqiq al-Aid, and Al-Aiz ibn Abd Salam, which we're going to see in this book. Because these scholars, we study their books in Usul al-Hadith or in fiqh, but we must be aware, because the Sufis are translated their book and in English, we must warn the people that some of them were Shazili Sufis, like Hafiz Suyuti. They have translated in English his book praising the Shazili Tariqa. And as well, I mean, Aiz ibn Abd Salam, he was a Shazili Sufi student of Abul Hasan Shadili, and Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah refuted Abul Hasan Shadili in his recent book published by Shaykh Uzair Shams and published by the Idara of Alama Bakr Abu Zaid, you know, Arad al Shadili. And Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he showed that the tasawwuf of Abul Hasan Shadili was based on philosophy. It was not based on Kitab al-Sunnah like Junaid and the earlier people of tasawwuf. And as well, Hafiz ibn Daqiq al-Aid, we all study his book, his Sharaf Umdatul Ahkam of Abdul Ghani Maqdisi. He was a student of Ibn Ata'illah Iskandari. And Ibn Ata'illah Iskandari, he was a student of Al-Mursi, who was a student of Abu Hasan Shazili. And Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah debated in Egypt Ibn Ata'illah Iskandari. And what the Sufis have translated Ibn Ata'illah Iskandari's book Lataif al-Minan, speaking about the biographies of his teacher Mursi and Shazili. You can read yourself. There's many fairy tales that Mursi and Shazili, they could, whenever they wanted to see the Prophet ﷺ, whenever they had the Prophet was always present in front of them. Without the Qutb, the world would explode. You know, all these fairy tales of the Sufi. So, you know, these scholars, unfortunately, whether it's Aiz ibn Abd Salam, who's a great scholar, the people call him Sultan al-Ulama, or Hafiz ibn Daqiq al-Haid, who is a senior scholar of Hadith, and we benefit from the books in Ilm al-Hadith. They had big problems in Tasawwuf, Shazilism. And but the thing is, what is funny is Hafiz ibn Daqiq al-Haid, he met Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, and he acknowledged that, like he has never seen someone more knowledgeable than him. He said he could take from whatever he wanted and left whatever. He was proficient in all fields of knowledge. So Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he met the great scholars of his times, and they had meetings. So there's no problem having meetings with Ash'ari scholars and others. So this is regarding so we must, we'll refute all of these scholars, because the Sufis are translating Hafiz Suyuti and all these scholars' works on Sufism, and they're very ahead of us. Unfortunately, Salafi, they're more busy in refuting each other's rather than refuting the Sufis and Muhammad ibn Alawi Maliki and all, those who are spreading these doubts. Many have written books against Ibn Taymiyyah, Jibril. No one has tawfiq to reply to it. But anyway, that's another topic. So let's go back to our main topic. So Ibn Hajar, why did Ibn Hajar translate did a summary of the book Bahjatul Asrar? So first of all, what is the book Bahjatul Asrar? Dr. Mubashir Hussain, he has translated Ghunyat Talibin in Urdu, and first of all, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, his creed, we have done a talk with Sheikh Abdul Qadir, with Sheikh Abdul Hamid Dimashqi in English. Everyone can see the real creed of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani. He was upon the Sunnah, and he believed in Allah being above the Arsh and not doing extrapolation of Allah's names and attributes. So Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, he is free of all these khurafat attributed to him in the book Bahjatul Asrar of Shatnufi and many other books of fairy tales. So Sheikh Dr. Mubashir Hussain, he writes in the introduction of this book regarding the book Bahjatul Asrar that Hafiz ibn Hajar himself, he quoted in Durar al-Kamina, volume 3, page 142, he quoted from one of the Sheikh Sheikh al-Kamal Jafar, that the book al-Bahjatul Asrar, ذكر فيه غرائب وعجائب, there's very strange stories, and the people تعانى ناس في كثير من حكايات وأسانيد فيه, and the people that criticize many of the stories and the asanid in the book Bahjatul Asrar. So Hafiz ibn Hajar, he's quoting from one of the Sheikh saying himself that there's problems, that there are very strange things in this book Bahjatul Asrar, which Hafiz ibn Hajar and Hafiz ibn Mulaqin, another great Shafi muhaddis, they made them, they summarized this book. So Ibn al-Wardi, he said, إن في البهجة أمور لا تسع. There are matters in the book Bahja which are not correct, ومبالغات, and exaggerations في شان Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, في شان Sheikh Abdul Qadir, and exaggerations in the status of Sheikh Abdul Qadir لا تليق إلا بربوبية, which are not suitable except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Lordship, meaning in this book, the guy, the Shatnufi, he is attributing attributes to Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani which only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. And Hafiz ibn Rajab in Zail Tabaqat Hanabila, he wrote, the biography, like all Hanbali scholars, he wrote the biography of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani. But he himself said, which has been translated into Urdu by Dr. Mubashir, that he did not rely on Shatnufi's 3 volumes biography of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, because there's many wrong things in it. There's the asanid are problematic, and he mentioned that he did the same statement of the Sheikh Al-Kamal Jafar, that that there's many wrong things in this book and the asanid are not reliable. So this is regarding this book. So the scholars, they have warned against the book Bahjatul Asrar, that there are matters in it. The statement of Ibn al-Wardi has been quoted in Kashf al-Zunun of Haji Khalifa, volume 1, page 657. So the book Bahjatul Asrar, it is shocking that such a book has been summarized by Hafiz ibn Hajar and Hafiz ibn Mulaqin. But the thing is, even if they have done it, you know, whatever they have done, yes, there are some khurafat in these books which are problematic. You know, like, I mean, like all the saints and the souls of the prophets, they appeared with the angels when the Prophet ﷺ gave the mantle to Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, and they said that the foot of Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani is on the neck of all the saints, and all the saints around the world, they agreed and they put their head down and they said, yes, the foot of Shaykh. You know, he quoted Hafiz ibn Hajar. He quoted these fairy tales from the book Bahjatul Asrar. But Ibn Hajar, he mentions all the people he quotes from, okay? He said this one said this is, and he says this is quoted from Bahjatul Asrar, and he tells all the story from Bahjatul Asrar. The story that Ibn Hajar quotes from other sources, they totally go against the Brailvi creed of Hajar Nazir, the Prophet being omniscient, omnipresent. And we will read some of the stories which the Brailvis himself have translated, attributing to Hafiz ibn Hajar, telling that Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, he cannot help you, he cannot bring you food, health and wealth, whatever you're seeking towards him. You're walking 11 steps towards what you call Baghdad Sharif. Because in the book Bahjatul Asrar, Shatnufi said to Turakan, walk 11 steps towards Baghdad and reciting salutation, and Ahmad Raza Khan quoted this in his fatwa. And I have a PDF on our website, which is called Fairy Tales of Ahmad Raza Khan regarding Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani. And I quoted from the Brailvi sources, and I linked the PDF to Fatwa Rizvia so people can check. You understand? But what is Hafiz ibn Hajar? He quoted some fairy tales from the book Bahjatul Asrar, but not the shirkiyat, you know, the things like Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani controls the universe and all the other matters which Shatnufi. So in a certain way, if he summarized it, it means he didn't take all this stuff that Brailvi takes. It means he himself sees there's a problem with it. You know, the statements like Salat Ghausiyah, he didn't quote it. All the statements which Ahmad Raza Khan quote from Bahjatul Asrar that Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani said, and he didn't say it, but what they attribute, my hand on my murid, it's like the sky on earth. If the foot of my murid sleeps, I will hold his hand. If my murid is in the east and I'm in the west and his clothes opens, I will cover him. So all these statements saying that Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, like, you know, in Fatwa Rizviyah, volume 21, page 392, Ahmad Raza Khan quoted from Bahjatul Asrar that Surah Wardi said, you know, he was sitting quietly in front of Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, and people said, why are you quiet? He said, why would I not show respect to the one my Lord has given control of my heart, my condition and the hearts and the condition of all saints. If he wants, he holds them. If he wants, he sends them. So all these controls, tasarrufat, you know, free disposals, all these powers which are in the book of Shatnufi and Ahmad Raza Khan quotes, Hafiz ibn Hajar did not quote all this stuff. And Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, he said, as Shatnufi says, and which Ahmad Raza Khan quotes on page 393 of volume 21 of Fatwa Rizviyah, don't you know that the hearts of the people are in my hands? They attribute this to Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani. If I want, I turn them away from me, and if I want to turn them to me. So all the hearts of the creations are in my hand. This is what Shatnufi attributes to Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani. So you can see why Ibn al-Wardi and other scholars, they said that there are problems in it, and there are things in it about the status of Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani which are only suitable for the lordship. You know, human being, he cannot control the hearts of people in such a manner. And all the other stuff that I will protect all my murid. If I'm in the west and they fall down, I will be there to save them. You know, all these fairy tales from the book Bahjatul Asrar, all these fairy tales, Hafiz ibn Hajar did not quote. Okay, he quoted some Mukashafat and some other stuff like the souls of the Prophet, Al-Khidr becoming in the assemblies of Hafiz ibn Hajar. He quoted some of these fairy tales from the book Bahjatul Asrar, but he did not quote these shocking kufriyat. You understand? So, okay. But as well, Hafiz ibn Hajar quoted from other sources, from Ibn Jawzi, from other scholars, things that go against the Brailvi creed, and we will read them shortly. Firstly, you know, we spoke about the manuscript. You know, this book has one manuscript in Calcutta from which it was published by Dar Kutub Ilmiya, and from which the Brailvis, they translated it into Urdu and English, okay? And this book, they claim it has other manuscripts. So we can check with the other manuscript. And the student of Hafiz ibn Hajar, Sakhawi, Suyuti, they all said that our teachers, he summarized the book Bahjatul Asrar. Likewise, Hafiz ibn Mulaqin. So, this is what we need to know, that the late Shafi scholars, many of them had that they had to look Sufiya, some were Qadiris, some were Shazilis. So all these great scholars of Hadith, they had mistakes, because we think, especially in India, Pakistan, that only the Ahnaf have problems with Sufism, but the Shafis, one of my teacher, he said they have as much, if not greater, problems with Tasawwuf. So that's another point we need to know, because they're publishing lots of their statements. So first of all, why? Okay, now in the second part of my video, I'm gonna accept, because for me, I mean, it looks like it's a book of Hafiz ibn Hajar, especially if there are other manuscripts. Now we accept. Now it goes against the Braillevi. The Braillevis have translated this book, but it goes against what they're doing. Why? Okay. So in the first chapter of Hafiz ibn Hajar, the chapter 2, they speak about Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani's upbringing. Basically, his father passed away and he was with his mother. And one day he was looking after the cows and the animals, and one of the animals, he spoke to him and he said to him, "You were not created for this," meaning looking after animals. And he told his mother, so this is no problem. Such karamat existed at the time of the Prophet. Some of the animals, they can speak. By miracle, Allah can make them speak. So his mother gave him some money and sent him to Baghdad. After, there's many stories which Hafiz ibn Hajar tells that he was starving sometimes for 20 days, and he had to take loans from people to buy food, and his mother would send money regularly to him, and when his mother would send money, he would repay the bakers and other people. And sometimes he would go to the crops where other students, because the madrasa at the time, people would go and study, and the rich people, they will give the money to students of knowledge, you understand? It was not like Medina University giving you rooms and everything. So let's read some of the chat. So if Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, he was struggling to looking for food and starving for 20 days, how can you ask food to him? How can you call him Data, Ghaus and Gharib Nabaz? All these statements. Hafiz ibn Hajar said he himself was starving. But if you say, it was at the beginning, before he was appointed as Ghaus Qutb, we will see, even when he became the scholars and all the students, we will read statements of him saying that the world is not in my hand. If it was in my hand, I would feed all the poor, the best. So he acknowledged that I don't have these powers. And people coming sometimes to him for dua, he would say, invoke Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rely upon Allah. He would not say, I'm the Ghaus Qutb Abdal, walk 11 steps towards Baghdad and, do all this, Ya Ghaus, Shay'an Lillah, all this stuff. Even in this book, there's nothing of him telling people, invoke me from far away. So first we're going to go, and we're going to go step by step, reading these stories. So, okay. So, on page 8, it says, Talha ibn Muzaffar al-Thami said, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani said to me, I remained once at the beginning of my career in Baghdad, 20 days without food or anything lawful to eat. 20 days without food. So I went to the ruins of Khosrow's great porch looking for something lawful to eat. There I found 70 righteous men who were looking for the same thing. So after he carries on the story that, one of the men, because his mother, whoever was going to Baghdad, she would send money regularly to him. So, when he saw 70 other people looking for food, one of the guy who brought him money, he couldn't find, there's a lengthy story, but at the end, he found him after many days and he gave the money of his mother. So what he did, he went back to this place, of course, so then he instead of keeping all the money for him, for the other days, he just shared it with the 70 other poor people. So, if someone is starving for 20 days and only has money after his mother sends him money, why are you saying, Ya Ghaus Shay'an Lillah? If Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, he's a human, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah protects his saints, and sometimes Allah can make miracles happen for them, like an animal speaking to them, or, guiding them through dreams and inspiration and ilham. Yes, we have no issue. But no, don't seek help from them for things only Allah can provide. And we're going to see this. Okay, so he was starving for 20 days. On page, and this is Ibn Hajar who said it according to what the Brailvi have published. So on page 11, Hafiz Ibn Hajar wrote, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani also related to me the following, meaning it's the same story of Talha ibn Zafar al-Thami. You know, Hafiz Ibn Hajar, he's referring all the people who narrates this story. I was sitting in the wilderness revising my lessons of Islamic law at the time when I was suffering from extreme poverty. You know, it's not poverty, extreme poverty. Sometimes someone whom I could not see said to me, borrow some money which will help you carry on with your study. I said, how can I go and borrow money when I'm poor and do not have anything which would I pay back? The person said, go and borrow, so we shall pick it up. You know, the story carries on. He goes to the baker, but borrows money from him. And then, you know, sometimes his mother would send money so he could repay. He had to borrow money to survive. Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani. You know, he had to borrow money. And you saying, Ya Ghaus Madad. Na'uzubillah. So after, they said at the end that he heard someone saying, proceed to such place and whatever you find on the bench, take it and give it to the greengrocer as payment for your debt. So he heard someone saying, you know, like a karamat, Allah brought him some money so he could repay his debt. So, you know, I have no problem. Allah can produce food for Maryam. He can produce money for Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani to repay his debt. You know, this is the karamat we believe in, which I mentioned in karamat awliya of Lalika and others. You know, such karamat we have no problems. This is the creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah to accept karamat awliya. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah brought in Wasitiyah. And only the Mu'tazili and the Aqlani, these type of people reject karamat awliya, and Ibn Hazm and some of the... So, you know, if you say to me, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani was struggling to pay debt, and he heard, so someone said, go to this place and there will be a coin, and you know, some coins miraculously happen there and he pays back his debt. Yes, Allah can produce a coin to help Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani in need. Okay, on the same page, he also related, meaning Talha ibn Muzaffar al-Thami, there was, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani said to him, there was a group of people from Baghdad who used to study Islamic law and were in the habit of going to the fields on the day of harvest to ask from some crops. Meaning the poor students who were studying with him, when the harvest would come, they would go and ask the people to give to the students. On one such occasion, they said to me, come with us to Yaquba to try to get something. Because I was living in real hardship at the time. You know, real hardship. I agreed with them. There lived in Yaquba a righteous man by the name of Sharif Yaqubi. So I went to visit him. When I met him, he said to me, seekers of the real, or perhaps the righteous, do not seek anything from people. You know, seekers of the real do not seek anything from people. And you saying, Ya Ghaus Madad. Well, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, when he was a student, this was saint person said to him, the people of the real, they don't seek anything from people. And so I never went to the fields again to ask for crops. Meaning Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani said, once this saint said to me, don't go and beg for crops, I never went again. So, you know, why you're asking people? Why you, Ya Ghaus Madad, Ya this one Madad, Ya Madad, why you... The saints, they're telling not to ask to people. Ask Allah. This book, you publish, it goes against what you're telling people. Ya Ghashayan Lillah, 11 steps towards Baghdad, Sharif. Okay, so this Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, when he was a student, he lived in poverty. Okay, now you will say that was before he was granted the status, the tasarruf fil kawn, and all the powers. Okay. Let's see what happens when, after, you know, they carry on his story, he became teacher, and when one of the teacher died, he was conferred the role of the madrasa. And because many scholars came to him, like Shaykh Ibn Qudama, you know, the famous Hanbali scholars, Abdul Ghani Maqdisi, the author of Umdatul Ahkam, you know, famous book of hadith, and the author of, you know, all the book of narrators of hadith upon which Tahzib and others are based. So when these two Hanbali scholars came to him and many others, he became very popular because of his wa'adh and tabligh. There were many people used to repent as his hands. They needed to extend the madrasa. And who gave him the money, it was people who were giving him money to extend the madrasa. So he did not have the power of kun fayakun, and the bricks they moved and all these things happened without people, and people were giving money to the madrasa, to the students. You know, like what Abdul Qadir Ahmad Raza Khan has written in the book Alam Hula, which is translated into English, that the sun and the moon, they don't rise up before saying salam and seeking permission for Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, and all the fairy tales and all the others powers. His madrasa, people were giving him donations to extend. And how was he living? We're going to see. How was he earning food? Was he saying kun fayakun and the food would appear, or he was working for his food? We're going to see, inshallah, from the book of Hafiz ibn Hajar Asqalani. So first, okay, on page 22, if you say, oh, that was when he was poor, this was before he had powers, tasarruf al-kawn and all these ikhtiyarat, okay. So this is the time when he became a teacher, you know, full grown. On page 22, Hafiz ibn Hajar says, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani used to say, I look into spiritual works and have not found anything better than giving food to people. Had the world been in my hands, meaning had the world been in my hand, وَلَوْ كَانَتِ الدُّنْيَا بِيَدِي, if the world was in my hand, I would not entertain anything except feeding the hungry. Meaning, if it was in my hand, the world, I would not do anything except feeding the poor. It means the world is not in his hand. And you're saying, kun fayakun, everything was given to him, you know, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All the powers, the administration, tasarruf al-kawn, it has been given to him. He distributes to whoever he wants. And he's saying, if the world, according to Hafiz ibn Hajar, which you have published, had the world been in my hands, I would not entertain anything except feeding the hungry. So you can't say, no, it was when he was not a ghost. This is after, according to you, when he become fully grown up and ghost. Okay. How was having chapter 4? How was Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani living? Once you become a teacher, you have a salary. So he was paid. And from his savings, he bought a land. He didn't say kun fayakun and, you know, it all grew up. It says on page 41, reporting from Al-Jubai, Ibn Najjar mentioned that Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani had lawfully acquired a piece of land, meaning he bought a piece of land. One of his students who works in the field used to cultivate it from him, meaning his own students used to cultivate the food for him. The Sheikh used to feed from this land. So that was how the Sheikh used to survive. You know, his student used to work for it. And you're asking food to Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani while his student used to work from his field so that he could eat. And you're asking food and children from Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani? You know, what are you doing? Are you blind? So the Sheikh, okay, and also he would feed the other people in it. Okay. So that's how Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani would live. Field. His students would, he earned money, he saved from it, you know, like a proper saints. And what you're teaching to people, go to the grave and this and that and ask the people of the grave. So there's a story, you know, when too many people came, they needed to extend the madrasa and people donated towards it. It says on page 42, Abu Sa'id ibn Saman, he said the Sheikh used to live near the gate of Al-Azhar when the running of the college of Abu Sa'id ibn Ali al-Mukharimi was delegated to him. He wanted to expand it and moved into it. Men and women used to donate money towards the building, meaning it was other human beings who used to donate for the madrasa to be expanded. And he says, until the work, one woman, she brought her husband, a builder, to the Sheikh and said to him, this is my husband and he owes me 20 gold a piece. I'm willing to gift him half of this amount on condition that he works in your college, the equivalent of the remaining half. So a woman said, my husband, he owes me money, and you know, I'm happy to cancel my husband's there. If he works, he's a builder, he will build the madrasa for you, the extension and everything. So this is how the madrasa of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, according to Sheikh Abdul Qadir, Hafiz ibn Hajar, was expanded. It was not kun fayakun and everything happened. It was like normal human beings. Okay. Now let's go on this page of page 46. This is a story of Izz ibn Abd Salam used to praise, and I've spoken already about Sheikh Sultan al-Ulama Izz ibn Abd Salam, that he praised Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, but some people said to him, despite his, you praise Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani despite his creed, meaning the people at the time, they had issues with the Shafi scholars, they had issues with Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani's creed, because he was Hanbalis and the Shafis were Asharis. So Asharis, they call Hanbalis Mujassim or whatever, Hashwiya. And so he said, people objected to Izz ibn Salam, you praise Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani despite his creed. And he said, the implication of the doctrine should not be confused with the doctrine itself. So, he's saying maybe, he says some words, but he doesn't mean this. So, he tried to find, but it shows that at the time, the Shafi scholars, they had problems with the creed of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani. And this is Ibn Hajar Asqalani says it. And there will be stories of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani telling people off and making tawbah from studying Ilmul Kalam, which you have translated. So you have to justify, because he's your peer, he's your peer and a peer. So you have to justify why you're studying books of Ilmul Kalam. So the last few stories. Okay. On page 56, Ibn Najjar related that it was reported to him that the judge Abu Nasr Zabini said, I resolved to go to the Shaykh Abdul Qadir to ask him to pray that Allah spares me from the evil of a group of people who were harming me. So one person, the judge Abu Nasr Zabini, he said, I wanted to go to the Shaykh to ask him to make dua to Allah, not to ask the Shaykh, asking the Shaykh to ask Allah to protect me from the harm. Allah protects me from the harm of these people. You understand? This is Tawheed. Going to a living person to ask him, like the people used to come to the Prophet and ask Allah for rain, ask Allah gives me this, ask Allah to give me back. This is asking Allah, this is Tawheed. So it so happened that I met him at the door of Al-Qasr Mosque and was about to ask him, when he looked at me and smiled and said, and Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani recited the verse, and Allah will suffice you for defense against them, and He's the hero, the knower. Surah Baqarah verse 137. So Abdul Qadir Jilani, according to this story, he knew the man's needs, by dreams or whatever, Mukashafa. And there's many stories of Mukashafa which Ibn Hajar quoted, that sometimes he would know the condition of the people, And the guy says, and thus he spared me from the need of asking people. Basically this judge came to Hafiz ibn, to Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani can you ask Allah for me to protect from people? He said, he recited the verse, Allah is sufficient for you. Meaning, I don't need to ask Allah, you can ask Allah directly, Allah is sufficient to protect you from these evil people. So these are the teaching of Tawheed of Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani. And your books say, Ya Ghaus Madad, Ya Ghaus Shayanillah, 11 steps walking towards Baghdad. This is what Ahmad Raza Khan, Alamna al-Hulafat are saying. And Hafiz ibn Hajar, which you bravely published, he's saying this story, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani is saying to people, ask Allah, Allah is sufficient to protect you. You should have shame. Open your eyes from this khurafat and look what Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani is saying to you, which Hafiz ibn Hajar is saying. Okay. So now there's last two stories. On page 63, Sheikh Izzuddin al-Faruthi reported that he heard Sheikh Shihabuddin Suhrawardi saying, I made the decision to study scholastic theology, meaning Ilmul Kalam, and the tenets of it, and wanted to seek Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani's advice. I went to him, and the moment he saw me, he said, it is not the provision of the grave. It is not the provision of the grave. So I left without saying anything. So, they're saying by Mukashafa, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani knew the intention of Suhrawardi, and he said to him, this is not the provision of the grave. This is not the provision of the grave. So why are you studying books of Ilmul Kalam? Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, he's saying according to Hafiz ibn Hajar, this is not the provision. Why are you not listening to your peer? Why are you not listening to your Ghaus? And Allah is the Ghaus. Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani is telling you to ask Allah. He is struggling for food. He is taking he is taking loans from people. He is taking donations from people to extend his madrasa. You understand? He needs builders to build his madrasa, according to Hafiz ibn Hajar. So the next story is the same. That Surah Wardi says, when I was young, I was engaged in the study of Islamic law. Then it dawned upon me that I should study scholastic theology, ilm al-kalam. I decided so, but did not inform anyone of my decision. One day, I performed the prayer with my uncle Abu Najib, and after the prayer, my uncle went to visit Shaykh Abdul Qadir and pay his respect. My uncle requested the Shaykh to pray for me, and I mentioned to him that I was studying Islamic law. I stood up and kissed the hand of Shaykh's hand. The Shaykh held my hand and said, repent from what you have decided to engage in, for you are someone who is going to succeed. Meaning you're going to succeed, but make tawbah for what you're going to do, meaning studying ilm al-kalam. He then let go of my hand and went quiet. However, I did not give up my decision to study scholastic theology, meaning I did not change my mind. Suddenly, I felt extremely vexed and went through some disquieting times. Then I knew this happened to me because I did not listen to the Shaykh. Meaning the Shaykh told, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani told the guy, do tawbah for what you intend to do, studying ilm al-kalam. But Surah Wardi, Shihabuddin, he still studied. And after he had anxiety problems and some disquieting times, and he said, this is because I didn't listen to Shaykh Abdul Qadir. So we tell Barelvis, listen to Shaykh Abdul Qadir and don't study ilm al-kalam. Accept the creed of the Salaf, and Allah being above his arsh, separated from the creation. Just accept it. Why you have to do, and just read this book of Hafiz ibn Hajar and you will see Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, he's not Hajar Nazir, he is not Alimul Ghaib, and all this book stuff in the book of Al-Ibriz of Abdulaziz Dabagh, that the Ghaus, Qutb, they meet in Al-Cave of Hira, and they decide not only what happens in this earth, but what happens on the other planets, and the hearts of everyone are in the control of the saints and Ghaus, and they fight between themselves sometimes. Whatever these fairy tales are. And Ahmad Raza Khan quotes from Al-Ibriz, Muhammad ibn Alawi Maliki quote from, this book is, they all quote from these books. So you Barelvis translate Al-Ibriz, you believe in Al-Ibriz Sharif, so-called the saints is present when husband and wife are doing stuff in their rooms. So, this is what is written in Al-Ibriz. Al-Ghaus Qub Abdal, they meet in a room and they decide whatever's going to happen tomorrow. And they control everything. Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani says in this book of Hafiz ibn Hajar, if the world was in my hand, I would feed all the poor. And you saying he controls everything, what kind of fairy tales you narrate from him? So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save us all. And I will further talk about the books of Suyuti, which the Barelvis have recently published, and all his stuff. That the books of Suyuti, his tafsir, they refer Hajar Nazir, Ilmul Ghaib, and the prophets can produce miracle by their own powers. But he had other problems, like the Hayatis, which we will discuss. The Prophet is alive in his grave, he can come out, puts his hand out, and Rifai can kiss it, and all this stuff, which Hafiz Suyuti unfortunately had, and all the other stuff of Utbi and others, which he quotes. So and his praise of the Shazili path, so we have to refute whatever they bring from Hafiz Suyuti or other books. So I will end up on this. Wa sallallahu ala nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam.